That's why everybody's leaving, or at least trying to leave, to try and have a better life. When the money that you earn, you then have more control over what it is you want to spend with the money that you have earned, and not give it to the tax man.
I look at the lifestyle I'm living, I look at how hard I'm working and what I get at the other end of it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. It doesn't stack up. I really hope that this encourages someone to explore what's out there, because sometimes we can get really fixed in our world and think that it's a little bit too scary, a little bit too big to step outside of it, when there is a whole different experience out there waiting for us. Hey fam, it's Isa here from the Black Network. I've got a really special video for you today. We are going to be talking about it's really about options in life, and it's about looking at life from a different perspective, taking bold decisions and seeing where that leads you. That's a really big theme of ours at the moment, especially with everything that's going on in the world. I think it's a really good time for us to be thinking differently, doing things differently, and just trying new experiences. So with all of that said, I am super excited to introduce you to a really special friend of mine, a lovely lady by the name of Samantha Rogers. Sam, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Rogers, and I'm currently teaching overseas in Saudi Arabia.
Thanks a lot, Sam. So, as you can probably guess from Samantha's intro to herself, she is British, and I'll let her kind of go through that. But she's British and made the decision a few years ago to actually move abroad. And you've been living in the Gulf for how long now?
In total, I would say 16 to 18 years. I'm trying to remember myself because I did come back for a couple of years after COVID. So I'd say about 17, 18 years now.
Amazing. So, what prompted you to move to the Gulf, and why that area? Why that region?
To be honest with you, initially it was more financial reason. I was tired of struggling in the UK. And if I'm really honest, I always wanted to work overseas. I never really saw England as somewhere that I wanted to stay for a long period of time. So once I became a teacher, it was the next option for me to find overseas work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the fact that you say that you were struggling and that was a big financially and that was a big motivator, I think is going to resonate with a lot of people, because so many people are struggling at the moment. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this episode. So when I think about moving abroad, I'm kind of thinking for someone like me that's never lived abroad, that it is quite maybe a little bit of a complicated process, or, where the hell do you start? So what would you say about that? What was that process like?
I think it depends on the job role that you have. Obviously, being someone like a teacher or a nurse, you're always going to be in demand. So that's probably a much easier job to actually find. But for me, I was quite lucky. I'd already been out to Dubai to visit some friends that lived there. Now, this was back in 2005. And while I was there, started talking to a few people, networking, and I was just very, very lucky that a lady said to me that she could actually get me a job teaching. So I guess I was luckier than most, but from a teacher perspective, it's very easy to get jobs. You could find so many recruiters, websites, etc. So it really depends on the field you're in, but it is very easy to find work overseas if you're prepared to get up and leave.
I love that. I love it. So when you say if you're prepared to get up and leave, what just I'm kind of, I suppose, jumping ahead a little bit, but it does make me think, do you notice a difference in people that move over, that kind of make that decision to move overseas, wherever it may be, and people that don't? Or do you see like a wish to go, but maybe a fear in people?
Of course, there's always going to be a fear, but the reason I say if you get up and leave, every time I tell somebody that I live overseas, the first thing I hear is, "You're so lucky." And I'm like, I didn't win a ticket. I didn't win a prize draw. I got up and I left. I made that conscious decision. And something important that you just said in regard to fear, you can't let fear control you. And what people forget is that even though I might be lucky to live overseas, I still miss my family. I don't get to go to lots of family functions. I miss out on lots of watching my great nieces and nephews grow. There's a lot of downsides to missing your family, but you've just got to weigh it up. As in, the bigger picture for me was always I wanted a better life, and I didn't feel I had the quality of life in the UK that I could overseas.
So I have to obviously have to ask, what is the quality of life like overseas, and how would you compare it to the UK then?
How long have you got? At the moment, I'm sitting by the pool in my
I see the background.
gym. We have a bowling alley. We have shops. This is all in one compound. Now, obviously, Saudi is completely different to a lot of the other GCC countries because it's a lot more segregated for expats. Whereas when I lived, for example, in Dubai or I lived in Oman or Qatar, there weren't so much compounds, but just really nice apartment blocks. I mean, for one, accommodation for me is on a different standard to the UK.
How is the accommodation different?
Well, it's very nice. I mean, most of my accommodation that I've had in the years that I've lived overseas, this may sound really minor to some people, but once you get used to having an ensuite bathroom, it's very difficult to share with everyone else again. It's these small things, balcony, access to a pool, and nice accommodation as well, modern accommodation, spacious. That if I even tried to equate the cost of something similar in the UK, no chance.
You can't even
And
begin.
then this is paid for by your employer. No rent. And then on top of that, no tax.
Yeah. And this is something that
No-brainer.
this is something that, I mean, obviously we've been friends for a long time, and I've seen from afar the lifestyle that you're living in these countries, which is, you can't afford to live the same lifestyle on the same salary over here. It's just, you can't really compare. I was so shocked the other day because I knew with you being a teacher that you pay zero rent, which is obviously the biggest cost for most people. When you're factoring in your living expenses, you're paying no tax. And I think you've mentioned that, you and other people in other jobs and other companies also quite often get other additional perks. Not paying rent and tax is just, I mean, does that do something to your psyche, not having to pay these? Because that's huge.
The problem with the UK is we all know that the very rich don't get taxed enough, and the people trying to make ends meet get taxed the most. For me, I don't mind working. I've never been shy of work. I would just like to keep the money that I earn, and you should be able to keep the money that you earn. I understand that taxation is needed to provide services, but no disrespect. The UK services are in a really bad way, so what are you actually paying for? You wouldn't mind paying tax and things like that if you knew that the services would be of some kind of standard, but look at how everybody's struggling in the UK, no matter whether you're paying your council tax, your tax. What are you getting? There's no value for money anymore. There is no value for money. That's why everybody's leaving, or at least trying to leave, to try and have a better life. When the money that you earn, you then have more control over what it is you want to spend with the money that you have earned, and not give it to the tax man, who then we have no idea what they're doing with it because you can't see it in the standard of what you're supposedly paying for. So for me, just that psychological impact of no, when I get my salary, nothing's been taken out of that salary. And I understand the whole world probably can't run like that. But while it's working this way in the GCC, I'm very comfortable to stay here as long as it continues.
Yeah, and I really don't blame you. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to have this video with you is because I'd mentioned earlier that we've known each other for a very long time. I've never really seriously considered actually going to the GCC, for example, until recently. But I think I'm like a lot of people at the moment where I look at the quality of life, I look at the lifestyle I'm living, I look at how hard I'm working and what I get at the other end of it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. It doesn't stack up. And so the reason I wanted to do this video was to really drive home the fact that there are other options. And you've mentioned the fact that you've lived in a few countries. Do you want to just kind of run us through where you've lived, what those countries are like, maybe give us a little bit of insight into what it's like to go to these countries? I guess that process, because I think when it comes to taking these steps, it's like, well, what steps can you take? What does that look like? What are the practical things that you need to do to make a move abroad?
Most employers will get all of that organised for you. You might need to have a medical exam. Then on top of that, they will want all your certificates to be attested. Once that's usually done, then they will start the visa process from their end, but they usually need to have your medical. Some companies will send you to get medical in the UK. A couple of companies I've worked for, I've been sent to Harley Street for medicals. Other places could just be your regular GP. It really depends on what the company's standards are. Once they receive most of those things and they get your certificates, then they start the visa process from overseas. So usually by the time you get to the country that you're supposed to be working in, your visa's already in process. Sometimes it will already be ready by the time you get there. And other times when you then come to the country, you then have to have another medical again, and then a few more documents, and then you'll get your visa. Different countries, it's been different rules. Sometimes I've got to one country, I've had my visa within a month. Other times it's been 5 months, but you can still get by. It's just that obviously you want to get your official resident card, whereas here in Saudi it's called the Iqama. In other places, just having your resident card, that means then there's a lot more things you can do. I mean, simple things like getting the internet in your apartment, and because then you're seen as an actual resident. But again, a lot of the legwork of that is done by the company. You just have to do the things they ask you to do. So it's not that you end up doing it all. I lived in the UAE for 9 years, so that was in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I've worked in both back and forth. And then I lived in Qatar for 3 years. And then I moved to Oman. I was in Oman just under 3 years. And then now I've been in Saudi for a year and a half. So I've traveled around. And to be honest with you, once you've been to one of the GCC countries, they are all roughly the same. The only difference with Saudi is that unlike the others, Saudi's a little bit more strict on certain things. And just in case anybody's thinking, yes, there is no alcohol in Saudi. So if that's what you're looking for, this is not the place for you. The other GCC states, you can drink, etc. there, but just not in Saudi.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really good.
And Kuwait, by the way, I've never worked in Kuwait, but Kuwait, the two. So if that's the kind of life you're looking for, I wouldn't suggest Saudi for you at all.
You enjoy living there?
I be honest with you, I mean, this is where I guess I'm luckier than most. I met somebody at the pool actually yesterday, a black guy from Tottenham, and he's been here for a year and a half. He works in finance. And we were talking, and this was his first overseas job. I can honestly say, I don't know if I would have come here as my first job. So I was like, oh, wow, really interesting. But you see, the difference is people are thinking financially because they know that Saudi is the place to come if you want a really good salary, because a lot of other people who are moving to GCC might be going to places for party lifestyle, whatever. I guess this isn't the place for that. So if you are coming here as a first job overseas, then you've got your head screwed on because you're coming for money. You're coming for finances. So I had to actually rate him for that because I thought, wow. Whereas because I've lived in a lot of the other GCC countries, me moving to Saudi has just been the next step in my journey because I'm okay with living like this, because the good thing about being in the Middle East and earning a decent salary is I can get away whenever I want. I go to Dubai for the weekend to see my friends. I go to Qatar for the weekend. A flight from here to Dubai is about an hour and a half. Reasonable prices. I can stay with friends. So I have the luxury of having a big network. But even people that don't, a lot of people end of the month, they go off to Bahrain. Bahrain, you can drive to Bahrain for here. From here, it's about a 4 hour drive, or you can get a flight for under an hour. So there's a lot of ways that you can still have a really good lifestyle. It's just that it's probably not the party place to be, but it definitely is the place to be if you are serious about making money.
Love that. I really love that. And I love the fact that there are so many differences in different countries as well. So you've mentioned a couple of times the party lifestyle. And I feel like when you speak about the Middle East or the GCC countries, there's a lot of misconception or a lot of preconceptions maybe around what that lifestyle is. You know, Dubai has this sort of party lifestyle reputation and Saudi has this maybe overly strict reputation. And it sounds like the truth maybe sits somewhere in the middle, but what would you say people need to know when they go to these countries?
I should probably say more so that Dubai. I should really say the UAE, because as much as people seem to think that the UAE is just Dubai, the capital is Abu Dhabi, and there are other emirates there as well, like Sharjah and Ajman. There are other emirates. So, for example, in Sharjah, in the UAE, there is no alcohol there. And so you have to be careful that you don't just assume that Dubai is just the UAE, and it's not. It's just one of the emirates. There are 7 emirates. Depending on which emirate you go into, there will be different rules, and that's something you have to be aware of. Dubai might be a little bit more casual and laid back than other emirates. There's a lot more restrictions. So it depends where you are. It's different in a way because I think that's probably the place that's more attractive, the most attractive place that most people seem to be heading for that lifestyle. But I'm sure if people watch the news on a regular basis, that lifestyle can also get you in trouble because what you need to remember, you still are in an Arab country. And I think a lot of people forget that because when you do go to certain places in the UAE, people don't think that when you see the way that people dress, sometimes people forget where they are in the world. That's what usually will get them into trouble. You still have to remember the cultural and religious respect for where you are and to still take note of that because this is where a lot of expats get themselves in trouble because they forget where they are. Because the surroundings at times in the evenings you could be out having a good time, but you still are in an Arab country. So I think that is one of the things a lot of people need to read up on certain things that you can and cannot do and things that are tolerated and things that will get you deported, end up in prison. So, people really need to make sure they are aware of the rules.
That's such a good point. And, we see these stories pop up now and then about some poor person that's gone to Dubai thinking it's Ibiza or thinking that they can just literally do whatever they want and actually paying the price for it. And you feel for them because they had this perception. But I think it's a really good point. If you are going to go to another country, you have to learn what the rules are, what the code of conduct is, and you got to be respectful of that. Do you know what you just reminded me of? I always loved Sex in the City, but I remember being so annoyed when I watched that movie. I think it was the second, I don't remember if it was the first or the second one, when they went to Emirates and they started trying to push American ideals on the population there. And they kind of had this theme about women being free, and Samantha wanted to be the way she was out there. And I just remember thinking, but you've gone to their country, you should respect their rules. This makes no sense to me.
Just going touching on that, I work with a lot of local women. I've worked with a lot of local women, and they are just like other women, just with different religious backgrounds. But they have the same jokes we do, and we still laugh. I mean, they're a lot more glamorous than the image that people like to show of these women looking like they're being held captive. They are some of the most glamorous women that I've ever met. And they are very vocal as well. And I think the image of women in the Middle East, especially in Saudi, has been changing a lot over the years. So when I do see that sort of stereotypical view of a woman from this part of the world, it kind of infuriates me a lot because, again, just like stereotypes that they do with us, people need to realise they do that with different religions, etc. I see women out here as being very, very powerful. And one thing I've noticed in this part of the world, women are they're respected because obviously they're like the mothers of the family, they're the mothers of the country kind of thing. They raise the children, and women are respected here. At the end of the day, whether women are respected or not, that isn't down to one country that you live in. Because if you look at the UK and lots of countries around the world, there are domestic abuse issues going on all around the world where women are being badly treated. So to always pinpoint this area or this region as the highlight of that is kind of, I just think that's very unfair because, like I said, if you look around the world, as a woman myself, I feel 100% safer living in the Middle East than I would any day of the week in the UK. I don't fear walking down the street. I don't fear being attacked. I don't fear being robbed. And I definitely don't fear the sort of sexual attacks that I would fear it on a late night on the way home in the UK. I don't fear any of that here. That doesn't mean I'm naive, and I'm not saying it would never happen because nobody knows what happens, what could happen, but I don't have that same fear.
Yeah, such a good point. But I think the fact that you've mentioned that the local women you feel are very powerful and that they're empowered. Do you feel the same as an expat?
Yeah, I think the thing about being an expat, from my experience, it really comes down to where your passport is from. That's my experience. Because I think at times my colour is not seen. It's usually, well, obviously you can't miss it, can you? But what I mean by that is that the passport kind of precedes that. So, for example, when I go for a job, if I think about the UK, for example, despite all your little tick lists, what's your background, we do know sometimes that's still used against you because, they've probably already got 2 black people in the office. We don't need another one. But I don't know. I mean, for me, that's been my experience. It could be different for other people in different industries because maybe for teaching, there is still this idea that the UK has the best education system. And I think we all know that's a lie. So, yeah, I think that could be it, because there's still that old belief that, oh, anything from the UK is great.
You've brought me on to one of the questions I wanted to ask actually, but when it comes to the education system, because I think a lot of people that would move abroad, especially to the Gulf region, but also to other regions, might be people with families, with young kids. And obviously, as a teacher and as a parent yourself, what would you say about the education system out there and also about raising a family out there?
Personally, raising a family out here would be ideal. I think it depends on the age of your children. The younger they are, the better, I think, because the only problem with children once they get past, let's say, maybe they're teenagers, most people send their children home to do things like their A levels. The problem is when you then try and get into certain universities, etc., they'd rather to see that you've done all of that in the UK. So I know a lot of my friends, a lot of their children, they send them home once they finish their GCSEs to do A levels back in the UK, because it's an easier transition when they're trying to get into universities. I think that's what the issue is. So I think if you've got younger children, they're nowhere near that age group. Yeah, I would say definitely great education system, great facilities, schools with swimming pools, auditoriums, just a lifestyle for the children that I think is unmatched in the UK, unless you're at some kind of private boarding school. When I think about most of the schools I've worked in the UK, and I've worked in a lot because I did cover for a couple of years, I used to sometimes look at some of those children and think, what would your life been like if you had some of the opportunities the kids that I've seen in the Middle East have? It's just, there's no comparison, and I really feel for them, because I think a lot of schools don't even have a playing field area in their school. Does that make sense? And yet these children have just got just about everything you can imagine. And I think that it sets your kids off on a really good foundation, because it does start in the primary school level. The only issue I would say is that you then got to break your children out of the bubble, because this is not real life, if that makes sense. If you return your children back to the UK, or then you're going to struggle with them thinking, well, where's the swimming pool at the school? Where's this? Where's that? Because they've been used to a certain standard. But from what I've seen, the way most people get around that is their kids go home a lot, so they're still touching base with reality. So for the summer holiday, most people I know, they're going back to the UK or to wherever their home countries. So their children still get that good balance. The children out here that I've met from the UK, they're just having the best time of their lives, because the school, the quality is better, the quality of education better, resources are better. I can't think of anything that's not better. And that's me working across, 4 different countries. I can never say that the schools in the UK are as good as here. And that's nothing to do with the teaching ability. But teachers, you still need resources to be able to teach. And the schools in the UK are struggling financially. Budgets, everything's being cut. They don't have the resources, they don't have the staff, they don't have the facilities. So teachers are really struggling to then provide the education they need, the children need. And out here, the schools have money.
Yeah. One of the things to me that makes it so clear that the schools out there are operating on a whole different level. My cousin who's moved out there recently, as a teacher, I know that you get your kids to go to school for free at the school that you teach at quite often, I think. Their school has an escalator. I know that might seem like a silly thing, but it's like, it's a school. A school has an escalator. But yeah, the level of resource they've mentioned is just different level.
When you said about them getting free children's places, it does depend on your job. I know, for example, some schools, one child gets 100% free, free, the other you pay 50%. So it depends on your role and where you're working.
Got you.
It depends on, for example, let's say you're married, it would be based on your husband's contract as well, as to what his allowance is for his children. What a lot of teachers do, they work in a school where they can get their children free. But not all schools operate like that. You might have to pay a percentage, but it depends on your package, not just your package, your husband's package as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make, actually. And I know that we've touched on some of the perks or some of the inclusions that you have when you move over to the Gulf region, but I know there's like a big variation pretty much across the board. So yeah, that's something people would need to look into and investigate for themselves if they were wanting to move over there. Let's also talk about community out in the region. You've been in these different countries, you've got a really wide network of friends pretty much all over the world. is there community? Is it a community as such? What does it look and feel like? I'm always kind of thinking and I suppose talking about like the black diaspora. And is there a kind of a black community, or is it just like a global community where everyone kind of comes together and becomes one family?
A bit of both, personally. I have both, so I think I'm very lucky. So, for example, I have that global community, which is usually derived from the people you work with. And naturally, they're going to be the people that you would more likely have the biggest bond with. Not everyone, because we all know when you work, some people are associates and colleagues, and other people are friends. And when I think about my work life, most of them are associates. Only a few of them I class as my friends, because I also want to separate my work life from my social life. But I've been lucky as a teacher, you do sort of come together a lot. If I think about during COVID, when I was living in Oman, that was your family, because you had no one else. So you really did unite. But then being also a black woman, you do also gravitate towards your own as well. And I also had a very good black network of friends. There's a lot of black events that go on because obviously, just like other nationalities have their own, sort of setups and events. There are a lot of things for the black community. They always say about us as black people, as long as we have a passport, we're everywhere, we travel, we seek out opportunities. I remember going to Abu Dhabi in 2006, and I was in a shopping mall, and a black guy came up to me, asked me who I was, and he said, "You're the first black woman that I've seen." And that was 2006. That would never happen now. Never ever happen now. The change in the way that black people have realised this is the place to be, or at least they know from a financial perspective, because like I said, we seek out opportunities. It's one thing we're very good at doing. I feel here I am blessed because travelling and going around the world, I just have friends just about everywhere. Some people you stay in touch with, some people you don't. But there is a really good opportunity to network here, not just for friendships, for business, but you also have to put yourself out there. You aren't going to meet people staying at home. You have to also get out and about. But there are lots of networking groups and things like that. I think it usually starts primarily with your work colleagues, and then the people that are friends. And then it might be through somebody that you're dating, then you start meeting their crew of people, and then you meet another crew of people. Some of my best mates that I've made since I've been out here have been through just meeting them by accident. Gone to an event, you start talking, exchange numbers. And I think because we're all away from our families, those of us maybe that are single, probably different for those that are married, you do gravitate towards other people in the same situation, because then you think, well, the bigger network I have, then it stops you from being, so lonely, and then they become your new kind of family, to be honest with you. So I would like to believe that the people that I've met over nearly 20 years of being overseas, they're like family to me now.
Love that. Really love that. So over almost 20 years now, what do you miss about the UK, if anything? And yeah, what are you grateful to have left behind? Not sure I should ask you that question, Samantha, but I'm asking.
Well, it's not very difficult. The only thing I really miss is family and friends. I don't miss anything else at all. Absolutely nothing. Don't miss the weather. Don't miss the extortionate prices. Don't miss there's nothing. I don't miss anything. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I return home for the summer next week. Whenever I'm back, I'll be very honest with you. I'll see my families. Give it about a week. I want to leave because I'm just not used to it anymore. I like it in small doses. So I usually come back for the summer. It's like, for example, as soon as I come back, I'm traveling again a week later. I can't stay there for very long. And then I usually come back for Christmas, and then I'll leave again because I just can't do it for very long. I'll come back for about a week and a half, and then I'm off somewhere for New Year's. It just doesn't suit my spirit anymore. And it's not that I'm completely knocking down the country. I just know what works for me. And I think everybody's got to get to that point in time where they know what works for them and what doesn't. I can honestly tell you, when I speak to most people in the Middle East, and anybody that I know works overseas, you'll be hard pushed to find anybody that wants to go back. Now that says a lot about the state of affairs in the UK at the moment. Yes, we miss our families, but the same way we're talking now, I'm so grateful for technology, WhatsApp video and all these kinds of things. I can still contact my family, I can still speak with them. It's not as difficult as it used to be. And also on top of that, from a family perspective, I don't think they want me to come back either, because they like having a free holiday and somewhere to come and visit. So it works both ways. But for me, I don't miss it at all. I'm just being honest. I really don't.
So do you think, like, what are your plans down the line? I guess you don't ever see yourself retiring to the UK, or do you?
Not a chance, no, nothing at all. There's nothing there for me. I mean, when I think about my parents, they obviously came over with a dream. I get it, and I really do understand it. I do sometimes wonder why so many of them still there, but this family, and I get that. This has become their new home. Yes, they may still go back to Africa and the Caribbean from time to time, but a lot of them will find it really difficult to go back after being in the country for 60 plus years. Does that make sense? I get it. I am only praying that I will never have that same fate. I will do everything in my power not to be there when I retire. To live in the UK country, you need money. I have to be realistic. The kind of money I would need to have a good life in the UK would be immense. I remember going to Barbados a couple of years ago. I met the lovely white couple there. They've got their life sorted out. They come to Barbados for the winter and stay in the UK for the summer. Now, if you can live like that and you set yourself up years ago, then fantastic. The UK is a lovely place to live if you've got money. A lot of us, we don't have that lifestyle. I'm not saying I would live in the UK, but I'll definitely be coming back and forth, back and forth. Does that make sense? But for me, I like the sun too much. I'm a sun seeker. I believe that we are people of the sun, and living in cold climates is just not, it's not what the ancestors wanted for us. I'm very sorry. I just don't believe that we were meant to be in cold climates. I mean, look at our skin. It just doesn't suit us. So for me, the idea of even staying in the UK and shriveling up there in the summertime, not me, I'm so sorry. My plan in the future is either to return to the Caribbean or somewhere in Africa. I need to be with my people. I need to see people that look like me on a regular basis. I need sunshine and I need that community spirit that I just don't believe we have in the UK anymore.
So is that a no then, Samantha?
If anyone wasn't sure what I meant by that, no.
It's a no. It's a no.
Unless I win money, if I came into some big, big money, that's different. Like I said, I'm trying to be really balanced about this. I don't hate the UK. I just don't have the time for it anymore because it doesn't do anything for me. It's not doing anything for me spiritually. It's not doing anything for me financially. But if things were to change, I cannot see how that's going to happen. Why would I want to put myself back in hardship? I would rather have less money but live a more carefree, stress-free life. Especially as you get older, we don't need stress. We all know stress is a killer. So why would I want to put myself in a really stressful environment? I'd rather earn less living in Kenya or Barbados or somewhere, but I'm happy. Because happiness, as you get older, you realize is priceless.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Also, just on that note, for people watching who may have different professions, different skill sets, what types of professions would do well out in the GCC? So obviously, I know teaching works. In your experience, what kind of roles are out there for people?
If you want me to be honest, I've taught friends. I don't think there's anything specific. I think engineering roles are a big one, quantity surveyors. I've got friends that are PAs. It depends on the company because if you're working, for example, for a UK company, that's how a lot of people get more of a good range of jobs because they might have an office in Dubai, they've got an office in Doha, and that's how a lot of people then get transferred because they'll probably ask people, look, we've got an opening at our new office in Muscat, do you want to work there? So it's not just about the role, you need to think about the companies that you're working for who then might give you opportunity to work overseas. But there are jobs galore. I mean, obviously, nurses, there's a big demand for nurses. There's always going to be a demand for teachers because as the GCC region is becoming more and more popular, like even in Saudi right now, there are new schools popping up all over the place. And I remember when that happened in Dubai, it's still happening in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and everywhere else. So because there's such a demand for people to come here, especially if families are coming, the schools are not short of students. There are schools popping up everywhere. So teaching, yes, it's a very big one. But at the end of the day, there are lots of other roles. I've got friends that work in a multitude of different professions, but it's down to maybe the recruitment agency that you are working with, but also, as I said, down to the company you work for. That's why it might be a good idea to work for a global company that have got offices and networks everywhere because you're more likely to be transferred, or at least if you put your name up to say, I wouldn't mind going to the new office that's just opened up in Abu Dhabi, and you're more likely to get that role. So you have to maybe sort of engineer yourself to work for those companies where you know the opportunities are there as well.
And I think also I love the fact that you're saying people can position themselves. So even if you're not ready at the moment or you're not in the right position to be eligible for popular roles in these countries, you can position yourself by looking at the companies that you are working with. I know someone, for example, who's spent the last couple of years doing some sort of tech qualification so that he can actually, when he's qualified, go out there and make a lot of money. So, it's about thinking sort of long term or medium to long term about how you can actually get there if you're not in that position at the moment.
I'd also advise people maybe take a trip out there as well and see it beyond working there, because I'm lucky I did that when I first came out here. I had a friend who lived out here. So I came to, not to Saudi, but when I moved to the UAE, and I went to visit them because I wanted to see if this was somewhere that I could live. I was lucky that I had someone that I could stay with. But it might also be a good thing to do, because I got my first job that way through somebody that I met, spoke to somebody. They said, I know a school that's hiring. So sometimes if you're coming out, but you come out with like a plan, like let me come out and maybe meet a few people beforehand, maybe get in touch with somebody, maybe get in touch with, I don't know, a certain company and say, well, I'll be in the UAE in a few weeks. I'd love to meet you just for, informal chat. That's also a good thing to do, because I think for certain places, it might be helpful, because then you might network and meet somebody. It might not be for that company, but somebody might say, actually, I know somebody who's hiring, let me see if I can get, you just never know. Sometimes you have to be a bit brave and put yourself out there, which is why I said you've got to be also ready to seize opportunities. And I would say I've met quite a few people that have been on holiday in the UAE, but they said they're coming out there for like a fact finder kind of mission and to see if they can network while they're there. So that's also a good thing that you could do if you could afford it.
No, I absolutely love that and fully agree. The power of networking should never be underestimated. I think when you look at whatever kind of job role you're looking for and wherever it is, in this kind of climate and environment, networking is one of the most powerful ways to get noticed. So 100% agree. Be brave, put yourself out there. What's the worst that can happen? We were kind of talking about long to medium term and the plans that you make, but also the quality of life that you have out there in the Gulf. You're living an amazing life and having a really good lifestyle, but you've actually used the opportunity to start something new as well, haven't you? So, yeah, tell us a bit about that, because I want to pick you up in that.
Oh, thank you. When I was living in Oman, it's a strange story basically. I've always wanted to write books. Writing is my passion, and I've been putting it off for years, as I'm sure most people do with something they want to do. It's fear of the unknown. What if it doesn't work out? What if I'm not successful? And I'll tell you what happened for me. I was living in Muscat at the time. Obviously, COVID came in, so we had to do a lot of online teaching. The airport had closed. We weren't allowed to leave the country. There were a lot of restrictions. And I remember when we realised we were going on to online learning, a colleague of mine said, this is your time. You've got no excuse now not to write the book. Because I think with a lot of us, we procrastinate and we've got something we want to do, but we've got a million different obstacles that we create for ourselves. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow because I've got to do this. And I've been doing that for years. And when she said that to me, you've got no excuse now, because we were teaching online at home. We had a lot of free time, obviously, as well, because, and I buckled down. So I started writing and I published my first book while I was living overseas. The reason I think it's so important it happened while I was overseas, because I also had the money to finance it, because I wasn't as strapped for cash as I would have been in the UK. Anybody who knows anyone that's an author, unless you're J.K. Rowling yourself, you cannot give up full-time work. It's very difficult unless you're maybe married to somebody and they've got money and you can do it then as a sort of passion. You do need money to fund these things. And one of the things that I appreciate about living here is that because it's tax-free and I keep more of my money, it can help me to fund things like that. And that's now what's helped me to, have brought out, I think I've got 17 books now. I can do author visits. I use my time very wisely. So sometimes, if I come back to the UK, I do author visits. It gave me, I think, more confidence living out here, because I think my mind was a lot more free. I wasn't as stressed as trying to set that up in the UK. And there's just so many things I'm thankful to this region for. But I probably still would have brought out the book eventually, but it probably would have been a lot later. And I think by living in this region and having a bit more freedom financially, it kind of enabled me to do that and do something I've always wanted to do, and I could no longer use an excuse. But it does afford you that kind of lifestyle where if there is something that you want to do, you can finance it. I know a lot of people out here that have got their little side hustles, things they're trying to finance, because they know they now can do that, whereas at home, it was difficult for them to do it. But you can set those things up because you've got more financial freedom.
100%. I mean, you've got the financial freedom, but as you said, you've also got less stress. You know, you've got more headspace to actually do what you want to do. It's the pace over here, isn't it? It's first of all the fact that you're literally working to live, or living to work, I should say, not working to live. You know what I mean? It's quite stressful, it's very fast paced, and it's a bit of a struggle, I think, to really get your head clear and give yourself that space to actually do your side hustle without burning out. Burnout is so real with so many people I know. So I love that you're doing that. Tell us more about your books and your poetry. Tell us something about that as well so we can learn what you do as an author.
Always love poetry, so I write children's books, but they're all in rhyming poetic verse. That's my thing. So I write children's books, poetry collections and stories, but mainly with black characters, to address the issue of not having really strong positive characters in books for children. And then I also do adult poetry as well.
Brilliant. I'm going to drop a link in the description for where people can find you and to give examples of some of your poetry. I've always loved your poetry anyway, but it's very powerful. I think with your children's books, one of the things that I particularly love is the fact that you use words that are really powerful words for the kids to learn and to kind of adopt and bring into their vocabulary as well. And I love that. Please, whoever's watching, check out Samantha's work and let us know where we can find you for anyone that's in the UK this summer when you're back.
I've got an event the 2nd of August in Leicester at Leicester Carnival. I have a stall there as well. And I'm also in Hackney on August the 16th for the Black Children's Book Festival, where I have a stall, but I'm also reading one of my stories there as well.
Love it, love it, love it. Samantha, I cannot thank you enough. We had a few tech issues, I'm just going to put it like that, to get this interview to you. So really, really pleased that we were able to do it. I really hope that this interview has been inspirational. It's been really inspirational for me watching Samantha's journey, watching the lifestyle that she has been able to give herself because she's been bold and has taken those steps. And I really hope that this encourages someone to explore what's out there, because sometimes we can get really fixed in our world and think that it's a little bit too scary, a little bit too big to step outside of it when there is a whole different experience out there waiting for us. So thank you once again, Samantha. I look forward to seeing you when you come back. And if you are watching this video, please like and subscribe as we grow the channel. Please share if you think this message needs to get to anyone else. Drop a comment if anyone else has also made a move similar to Samantha's, or if anyone's thinking about it. If you've got any kind of questions or thoughts on this issue, we'd love to hear them. That's it for now. Thank you and see you in the next one.